Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the synthesis of yoga. We are on page 117?
117.
117, yes, the sacrifice and the Lord of the sacrifice, as always with our beloved Ranga. And we begin with the sentence, there is another basic realization.
So, as usual, we will give a summary of what he said earlier so that we get the continuity. So, in the previous para, he has said, but these are my words, as stated earlier in the last para, some persons experience the cosmos within themselves, but in some other cases, the cosmic divine can be experienced outside oneself in the physical world and also in other individuals. The divine presence can be felt or seen as indwelling in everything, but also as containing everything. Yet, it is not in any way bound to these external forms in the universe. In other words, it can be cosmic in a double sense, indwelling all but also containing all, and at the same time the transcendental. Again, the divine presence can be felt or seen as a pure solitary self, which contains everything, and in this silent omnipresence, the human ego disappears. Later, the divine presence can be felt as entering and possessing the outer nature of body, life, and mind. But now, my thoughts, my emotions, my actions are not produced in the old instrumentation of my previous body, life, and mind, but seem to emanate from this new divine presence which has invaded and occupied my being. It feels like the earlier ignorant body, life, and mind has now become the divine origin of individual, but not egoistic, all thoughts, emotions, and actions. The ignorant, egoistic outer nature has been replaced by the divine presence. Now, devoid of wrong identification with outer nature and ego, man feels himself to be an individual form created and placed in the universe for the convenience of divine action in the physical world. This is what he said earlier. You can experience the divine outside yourself, you can experience the divine within yourself, and when you see it within yourself, it can go to the extreme that you feel the divine is himself occupying you, and all your thoughts and emotions are coming from that source and they are not yours. So that's what he said in the earlier para. Now we read today's para. There is another basic realization, the most extreme of all, that yet comes sometimes as the first decisive opening or an early turn of the yoga. It is the awakening to an ineffable high, transcendent, unknowable above myself and above this world in which I seem to move, a timeless and spaceless condition or entity which is at once, in some way, compelling and convincing to an essential consciousness in me, the one thing that is to it overwhelmingly real. This experience is usually accompanied by an equally compelling sense either of the dreamlike or shadowy illusoriness of all things here, or else of that temporary, derivative, and only half real character. For a time at least, all around me may seem to be a moving of cinematographic shadow forms or surface figures, and my own action may appear as a fluid formulation from some source ungrasped as yet, and perhaps unseizable above or outside me. To remain in this consciousness, to carry out this initiation, or follow out this first suggestion of the character of things would be to proceed towards the goal of dissolution of self and world in the unknowable, moksha, nirvana. But this is not the only line of issue. It is possible, on the contrary, for me to wait till through the silence of this timeless, unfilled liberation, I begin to enter into relations with that yet ungrasped source of myself and my actions. Then the void begins to fill. There emerges out of it, or there rushes into it, all the manifold truth of the divine, all the aspects and manifestations and many levels of a dynamic infinite. At first, this experience imposes on the mind and then on all our being an absolute, fathomless, almost an abysmal peace and silence. Overpowered and subjugated, stilled, liberated from itself, the mind accepts the silence itself as the supreme. But afterwards, the seeker discovers that all is there for him, contained or new made in that silence, or through it descends upon him from a greater concealed transcendent existence. For this transcendent, this absolute, is not a mere piece of signless emptiness. It has its own infinite contents and riches, of which ours are debased and diminished values. If there were not that source of all things, there could be no universe. All powers, all works and activities would be an illusion. All creation and manifestation would be impossible. So, this is a very detailed description of the Nirvana consciousness, or you can call it the self, or you can call it also the Brahmic consciousness. Okay? Where mainly you are outside the universe and you feel yourself to be absolutely in a consciousness which is immutable, infinite, eternal, and featureless. You can't describe it. It is void of all features. That's why the Buddhists call it Shunyam. Shunyam is a zero, nihil. That's why they call it. But this nihil can be something which is pregnant with everything unmanifested yet. So that is how Advaita sees it, and Buddhism sees it as an emptiness. It is true that it's an emptiness, but it is pregnant with all the possibilities that can be created out of that so-called emptiness. So, we'll go and see his description. And this is what happened to Sri Aurobindo, by the way. This was his first major experience. It was not his first experience, but major, yes. Basic, Sevda uses the word basic, in Baroda. There is a beautiful letter written to Dilip where he explains this. I am reading each sentence. There is another basic realization, the most extreme of all, that yet comes sometimes as the first decisive opening or an early turn of the yoga. It is the awakening to an ineffable, high, transcendent, unknowable above myself and above this world in which I seem to move, a timeless and spaceless condition or entity which is at once in some way compelling and convincing to an essential consciousness in me, the one thing that is to it overwhelmingly real. So you enter into a consciousness which is absolutely real to you, but it is featureless. And it is so real that the rest of everything seems to be unreal. And that unreality also he has given 3 qualities. We'll have a look at that. This much is clear. Okay? It's a timeless, spaceless condition. It has to be timeless because it is immutable. There is no action taking place there. All the action is down below. You are seated on the mountain top, absolutely calm and quiet, and only a witness. You are watching everything, but no judgment. That's the experience of the self. You can see everything going on below in the valley, including your body, mind, life. They are there, and you are up here.
Could you talk a bit about the next page and the abysmal peace?
Yeah.
Abysmal peace.
Yes, it seems to be
Strange.
abysmal means without end. The abysm doesn't seem to have. It's deep, so deep that abysmal. Abysm is something a deep gulf, a deep hole.
Not negative at all.
No, it's not negative at all.
Okay.
It's a peace. But this is the same thing. Someone can see it as an emptiness, and someone can see it as not empty but full. I usually give the example of water, so that then it becomes clear. Okay, so suppose you are making an experiment, okay, and you have a glass of water on your table. The water is transparent, pure, and static, no movement at all. Now, in your imagination, it's an experiment. Make that glass larger, 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 and the water also is going on becoming more and more. It's filling the glass. Take it, take it, take it, take it, take it to the extreme. Take it to infinite. There is no glass now. You are not seeing the glass because it's gone away. So, what are you seeing? And the water is absolutely transparent and without movement. So what are you seeing? I call someone who has not participated in the experience and I tell him, what are you seeing? He will say, I am seeing nothing. That's a Buddhist.
Yeah.
But someone who has participated with me knows that there is substance there. There is water. He will say, no, it is water. That's the Advaita interpretation. So the same thing can be interpreted as so positive that it has no features. And the other will say it is absolutely empty. But I don't think that Buddha said it is empty because he refused to philosophize. He said if I start philosophizing, there will be confusion. Because language is not enough to describe something which seems to be empty and yet it is full. Language is inadequate. That's why it's ineffable. So, the way you see it is different. In Sri Aurobindo case also, he found it absolutely empty of all. And later on, that emptiness started filling with power, knowledge and everything. So, that he will tell you later on. So, we have done the first. It said, awakening to an ineffable, you can't speak about it, high transcendent, unknowable to the mind, above myself and above this world. In other words, myself individual, world cosmic is the third level, transcendent. But this transcendent can be experienced even at the second level of the spiritual planes of consciousness in the higher mind. You can experience it. The experience may not be full or it may not be complete, but you can experience this thing. So that's because it's the first. It comes very often, he's saying, and the first decisive opening or an early turn of the yoga.
Yes, interesting.
Now, early turn of the yoga, you can't go to the highest. So it's very clear that you enter into the second level, the spiritual planes of consciousness, and you get the transcendent experience. Okay, above myself and above, in which I seem to move, a timeless and spaceless condition or entity which is at once in some way compelling and convincing to an essential consciousness in me. The essential consciousness is your true being, your consciousness. The one thing that is to it overwhelmingly real. And usually, this experience is usually accompanied by an equally compelling sense either of the dreamlike or shadowy illusoriness of all things here, or else in that temporary, derivative, and only half real character. He has given 3 descriptions. Dream-like. When you wake up, the dream is unreal. So that's a dream-like. It is only a fleeting. Everything there in the physical world is fleeting. Okay? It's transient. So that's one. Or the shadowy illusionist. It's like seeing only the silhouette. So that's one thing. And then the last one is temporary, derivative, and only half real character. It is real, unreal. That is Shankara's description. It is real, unreal. It seems to be there temporarily, but it disappears. So these are but the basic thing is that it is something which is not as real as the self.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what is explained. So temporary, derivative. For a time at least, all around me may seem to be a moving of cinematographic shadow forms or surface figures, and my own action may appear as a fluid formulation from some source ungrasped as yet and perhaps unseizable above or outside me. So, you can see yourself moving and it seems to be like a cinema shadow. Now, the cinema shadow is very interesting, the image, because when you are seeing a film, if there is a joke, you start laughing. If there is a sad scene, there are many people who cry. You are identifying yourself with the images.
Yes.
Now, the images are nothing but your body, mind, life. You are identifying yourself with it and you are either enjoying or you are suffering. So, when you go to the self, you realize, like you are watching a cinema, why am I crying? Or there are only images on the screen. Why the hell am I laughing? There is nothing, no reality at all there. That's the experience of the self. You realize that the body, mind, life is not the real thing at all. So you start looking at it in a very indulgent way. Okay? Sri Aurobindo says also, like he gives another example. He says, when your own child, okay, you take away his toy and he starts having tantrums. Loudly he starts shouting and crying and all. But you know there is nothing serious. So you're just watching him and he having his tantrums. But you are convinced that there is nothing serious about it. So this is another image he uses for the self. So when you are in the self, your enjoyings, your sufferings are all nothing but the tantrums of a child. They have no reality.
Wow.
This is how he describes.
Yes.
In the synthesis, he says that. So here he's saying the same thing, but there can be grades of the illusoriness. They can only be shadow forms, or they can be some half reality they may have, but they are disappearing. And the disappearance is each thing disappears in its own time. No? A human being lasts 100 years, maybe less, more, but finally it disappears, the body. A butterfly will last only for 1 week. There are some things, a small firefly or something, maybe 2-3 days, I don't know. So it depends, but it will ultimately disappear. Everything in the physical world will disappear. So that's why it seems to be he's using the words, for a time at least, all around me may seem to be a moving of cinematographic shadow forms or surface figures, and my own action may appear as a fluid formulation of some source ungrasped as yet and perhaps unseizable above or outside me. In other words, I am not acting, but the body is going on acting. Someone is making it act. Who is making it act? Ungrasped. You don't know still. You have not yet discovered. But I am not acting. So that's what he's saying. To remain in this consciousness, to carry out this initiation or follow out this first suggestion of the character of things would be to proceed towards the goal of dissolution of self and world in the unknowable, moksha, nirvana. So, if you believe in that experience and think that it is final, then it will end in liberation, moksha. and you can disappear into the infinite. But Sri Aurobindo was not convinced that this is the ultimate. So he waited. He didn't jump to conclusions. He waited until finally found out that this so-called emptiness is filling. It's filling itself with knowledge, with power, with ananda. All these things were coming into him. So you have gone to a slightly higher level. In the Life Divine, in the very early chapters, he has said that when you go to the self, three possibilities. Either you see the physical world as unreal, and then naturally you reject it. That's a Buddhistic solution and the Mayavadic solution. Don't worry about the world, it is transitory, it is unreal. So go to the reality. That's one experience. The other is you have the cosmic consciousness. When you go to the self, you have the cosmic consciousness. Several have had that experience. They see the world as real and you don't reject it. Okay? That's another one. Or you may see it as unreal. This is Sri Aurobindo's experience, and yet he did not jump to the conclusion that it is unreal. He said, I will wait patiently and see. And then he found that behind the illusoriness of the world, the shadow-like forms, there is a reality hiding behind the apparent shadow. The shadows are only apparent. These three possibilities are there. In Life Divine, he has mentioned in very short. Okay, so he is describing the consciousness of the self. To remain in this consciousness, to carry out this initiation or follow out this first suggestion of the character of things, would be to proceed towards the goal of dissolution of self and world in the unknowable. Moksha, Nirvana. This is the Buddhistic solution. No more pain, no more suffering. You escape and go back to the source from where you came. But this is not the only line of issue. So Sri Aurobindo says there can be another reality, and that's a integral yoga and integral philosophy of his. Go even higher up. Why do you stop at the second level? Go to the third level. That's what he's saying. But this is not the only line of issue. It is possible, on the contrary, for me to wait till through the silence of this timeless, unfilled liberation. Note the unfilled liberation. You are free, but it is unfilled. It is empty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I begin to enter into relations with that yet ungrasped source of myself. Oh, all the action is coming from there. Now I know what that is, he says. And that's the supermind. I begin to enter into relations with that yet ungrasped source of myself and my actions. And then the void begins to fill. There emerges out of it, or there rushes into it, all the manifold truth of the divine, all the aspects and manifestations and many levels of a dynamic infinite. Now it is dynamic infinite. Earlier it was static infinite. Now it is dynamic infinite. If you go higher up, the dynamic aspect comes into play. At first, this experience imposes on the mind and then on all our being an absolute, fathomless, almost an abysmal peace and silence. So, first he said it's in the mind, then he's saying later on all our being. So what he means is that the vital also becomes calm and quiet. But in the beginning, the mental Purusha realizes that it is outside the body-mind life and it is calm, liberated. But down there, your body is also acting, and who is making it act? Universal nature, like a machine. And your vital also is acting through the universal prana. And the mind also is having thoughts. You are not having the thoughts. The thoughts are occurring in the mind, but you are just watching it. Okay?
Do you feel that many of the early ashramites had this experience?
Yes. Not many, but some.
Not many.
No, not many.
Oh.
Some had. I told you that story of Narad asks Sri Aurobindo, what is consciousness? So, and then he says, what is the Brahmic consciousness? Has anyone had it in the ashram? So Sri Aurobindo says, yes. So Narad asks, can you whisper to me the names? And they said, no. But later on, I told you, he was our hair cutter.
Yeah.
He used to cut our hair, Manodhar. He had the experience. Nolita certainly had the experience. Yeah. So, it is something so powerful that it changes the value system completely changes. Nothing has any importance anymore in the world. It's all shadow. It's all unreal. Why bother about it? That is the reality. And this is very interesting because you can experience it for an hour. You can experience it for 2 hours. You can experience it for 6 months. I know of somebody who had experienced it for 6 months and then slowly it vanishes and you are back to your normal old nature. So in fact...
No permanent change of any sort?
Pardon?
No permanent change of any sort?
All spiritual experiences changes you, but not fully. Because the old nature is still there. And this old nature you have collected over thousands of lives. How is it going to disappear so quickly? That's the problem. So the old nature is there, but slowly, when you start consciously doing yoga, the nature changes. But there is always an inconscient and a subconscious in you, but that gets pushed down. The higher parts of your mind and vital get purified. Many yogis attain that, but the body remains untransformed. But Srirango's even body got changed but not transformed. Transformed means it will become a divine body. It was a biologically formed body, but with tremendous changes. Srirango's body was completely, I told you, his color changed.
Yes, that story of Purani, when he meets him, says, what has happened to you? And Sri Aurobindo points to Purani's beard.
What happened to you?
What happened to you? He wouldn't say any more.
This is Srirango's sense of humor. He used to always do that. Okay? I'll give you 3 examples of his sense of humor. When he was a 3-year-old child, okay, he had an uncle and he used to call him Big Uncle, because in India we have several uncles. So you say Bado Mama, Choto Mama, Mejo Mama, okay? Big uncle, small uncle, medium uncle. So you have all these words. So this was a man, he was Bado Mama. Bado Mama means big uncle, okay? I'm telling you because in Bengali, Bado Mama. So this Bado Mama one day was teasing and playing with Sri Aurobindo when he was 3-year-old, okay? And he showed him a mirror and says, Choto Oro. Choto Oro means small Oro. And he showed the picture, the reflection in the mirror and said, Choto Bandor. Bandor means monkey. You are the Choto Oro, you are the small Oro, and this is the small monkey. He showed him. Now this 3-year-old, he takes that mirror and shows it to his Bado Mama and says, Bado Mama, Bado Bandor. Big uncle, big monkey. So that is the sense of humor at the age of 3. Okay, 3 or 4, whatever. Okay, so then there is the other case also where he turns the thing round. Gandhi's son came to see him, if you remember. Okay, he came to see him and he saw Sri Aurobindo smoking. He used to smoke cigars.
Yes.
Around 1920, this was.
But mother took a cigar out of his mouth one day.
I don't know that.
Yeah, I heard that. And then he never smoked again.
He felt that mother does not like it. That's what I have heard.
Uh-huh.
And so he stopped automatically. Stopped eating meat and as well as smoking or drinking. So this Gandhi's son came and asked him, why are you attached to smoking? So Sri Aurobindo countered him and said, why are you attached to non-smoking? Attachment is the problem. Whether it is this or that is not the problem. So you see, this is exactly what it is Purani also.
Yes.
Purani said, what has happened to you? Because first time when he had seen Sri Aurobindo, he was dark, like an average Bengali. Maybe even less than average. Maybe he was quite dark. But he had completely become a golden color. Okay, when we used to see him, it was like that. And this was not a color like, the Westerners, what you call the white race. It's not like that. It was absolutely a mellow golden color, like you have more or less in the Kashmiri color. In the north of India, many people have this type of the beautiful fairness. So that was his. So then Srimata asked, because he had grown a beard. Purani had grown a beard. She said, what has happened to you? So that was and that was the time when he said that India will be free.
He what?
India will be free.
Ah.
No, that was the first time, sorry, not the second time.
Okay.
This was the second time. And the first time he told him that I want to learn bomb making from you.
Yes.
Because of the Alipur bomb case. But Srimata said, no, there's no question of bomb. Why do you want to make bombs? So he said, I want to free my country. He said, that don't worry about it. The British will go away by themselves. They don't need to, you don't need to do anything. He forecast that in 1920. And 1922, when he came back next time, Srivadeva changed his color. And there is a detailed description of the changes in his body. Srivadeva. First of all, he never used oil in his hair, but it always seemed slick and always oiled, well oiled, not dry. So that was because of the yoga. Then the color of his teeth changed. The color of his toenails, the shape of his toenails changed. He noted all these things. The saliva started tasting something different. So these are the body changes that occur after yoga.
Wow.
He has noted all these things in the record of yoga.
Champakala must have paid close attention also.
Pardon?
Champaklal must have paid close attention.
Yeah, but he wouldn't have. He would have seen the change of the color.
Yeah.
But the teeth and the nose,
Yeah.
I don't know if he has seen.
Yeah.
But Srivadeva used to, Champaklal used to cut his nails and toenails.
Yes.
And when he used to comb the hair, all the hair that used to be there, he used to collect everything. Those are the relics that go out.
Yes.
And he used to very meticulously, he would collect all that, put the date, and put in small boxes. Such was his devotion. So, this is the experience of the Brahmic consciousness, the self, Nirvana. Okay? So, but Srivadeva is saying that it need not be static at that. You can go beyond it. And the so-called emptiness can fill with other things. Okay? So, overpowered and subjugated, stilled, liberated from itself, the mind accepts the silence as the supreme. That is what he means is, it is so satisfying that you think that that's the ultimate. So most people are satisfied with that. The Buddhists are satisfied with that. No more suffering. That's enough for me. I am liberated. I can go back to where I came from. Accept the silence itself as the supreme. There is nothing beyond that. But afterwards, the seeker discovers that all is there for him, contained or new made in that silence, or through it descends upon him from a greater concealed transcendent existence. So, that is Srivadava's experience. For this transcendent, this absolute, is not a mere piece of signless emptiness. It is not an emptiness. It's a fullness without features. That's why we discussed the water and the emptiness, the transparent water. Okay, so it's only an image to explain this. It has its own infinite contents and riches, of which ours are debased and diminished values. Ours means our values. We have a mind, but the mind is debased. It is diminished value. Mind is powerful. Man's mind is powerful. It can invent the TV, it can invent the radio, it can invent the mobile. The animal can't do that. So man's mind is a powerful tool, but it is nothing compared to the supermind. That's what is a diminished value. Our vital is also powerful. It can do so many things. Okay, if you are a vital person, you can build an empire. Alexander, Napoleon, they're vital beings. But compared to the supreme energy of the divine, it is nothing. That's why he's saying diminished values. Okay, it has its own contents and riches, of which ours are debased and diminished values. If there were not that source of all things, there could be no universe. All powers, all works and activities would be an illusion. All creation and manifestation would be impossible. So, he's saying this in different words, but there are three levels. Level 1, our body, mind, life. Level 2, the spiritual planes of consciousness, including the Nirvana consciousness. But there the world is disappearing. So you have to go to the third level to see that what is disappearing is not really disappearing. Forms are disappearing, but the divine presence is there. That's at level 3. So that's what he's saying. So the transcendent creates the cosmos, and the cosmos creates the individual. The cosmos is creating your body, mind, life. Universal matter is creating your body, universal prana your vital, and universal mind plane is creating your mind. That's what he's saying. These are the three fundamental realizations, so fundamental that to the yogin of the way of knowledge, they seem ultimate, sufficient in themselves, destined to overtop and replace all others. We'll discuss these three fundamental realizations after we come back. And yet, for the integral seeker, whether accorded to him at an early stage, suddenly and easily, by miraculous grace, or achieved with difficulty after a long progress and endeavor, they are neither the sole truth nor the full and only clues to the integral truth of the eternal, but rather the unfilled beginning, the vast foundation of a greater divine knowledge. Other realizations there are that are imperatively needed and must be explored to the full limit of their possibilities. And if some of them appear at first sight to cover only divine aspects that are instrumental to the activity of existence, but not inherent in its essence, yet when followed to their end through that activity to its everlasting source, it is found that they lead to a disclosure of the divine, without which our knowledge of the truth behind things would be left bare and incomplete. These seeming instrumentals are the key to a secret without which the fundamentals themselves would not unveil all their mystery. All the revelatory aspects of the divine must be caught in the wide net of the integral yoga. So, we'll see what are instrumental, what are the fundamentals, and what are the three fundamental realizations. So, what are the three fundamental realizations? The individual, the cosmic, and the transcendent. You can experience the divine within yourself. You can experience the divine in the cosmos, or you can experience the divine in the transcendent, which is the Nirvana.
And what about when he says you can experience them both?
Yeah, that can happen, but it's very rare. It's very rare. Even for Srimda it did. Mother had the experience of the divine within herself. But Srimda had the divine, transcendent divine. That's why he introduced the psychic element long afterwards in the synthesis. Okay, so whereas in the jail, he had the experience of Sri Krishna, guiding him in everything. He says in the Uttarpada speech, he says that the bars which were my cell had bars, iron bars. That is Sri Krishna guarding me. He goes out into the compound, he sees Sri Krishna in the tree, giving him shade. So it's a marvelous experience in jail.
And then he was taught about the supramental.
Yes, by Vivekananda,
Vivekananda.
who came to him in
Yes.
a subtle body and explained to him all about the supermind. So, these are the three fundamental realizations, so fundamental that to the yogin of the way of knowledge, they seem ultimate. Any one that you experience, you feel that there is nothing more. It is so convincing. Okay? That's why they stop. They seem ultimate, sufficient in themselves, destined to overtop and replace all others. This is what normally you feel. Okay? Whether it be the divine within yourself from the bhakti yoga, the yoga of devotion, or you see the universe as the divine, or you see the divine as the transcendent, you feel that that's the last. And yet, for the integral seeker, whether accorded to him at an early stage, suddenly and easily by miraculous grace, or achieved with difficulty after a long progress and endeavor, they are neither the sole truth nor the full and only clues to the integral truth of the eternal, but rather the unfilled beginning, the vast foundation of a greater divine knowledge. Now, this, what he is describing here, is his own case. He has said in a letter very clearly that as it came to me as though it is a miracle and it came suddenly. So here he is not saying my case, but it is very clearly his own case. Accorded to him at an early stage, suddenly and easily by miraculous grace. Okay, this is his own case.
And he speaks of the integral seeker.
Yes. Because he himself was wanting the integral seeker. No? And this also happened to, there is one well-known person now, they call him Sadguru. Okay? And he also had this experience. He had no interest in his spiritual life. He had no outer spiritual life. He wasn't reading the scriptures or anything. But there was a purity in him. And he sat one day in Mysore on the rock. Okay? There's Chamundi Hill, and he went there and sat, and he had the experience of the cosmic consciousness. The self, but cosmic consciousness. And later on, much later, when he was sitting with many people, his being rose and went into the first experience. And there he lingered for 13 days, he says. And the body is lying there all around. And after 13 days, when he came down into his body and opened his eyes, he saw a huge crowd in the house. Because 13 days had gone by, but he didn't realize that. Because he had gone into the timeless, remember? He is in the timeless.
Yes.
So when he comes back, he thought it's just a few hours. But 13 days had gone by. And there's a huge crowd wanting to see what's happening to him. He's not responding at all. So this was his experience. But he had the cosmic consciousness. He experienced Ananda. Because
he's on YouTube a lot.
Yes, he talks a lot.
Yeah,
he doesn't believe that there's anything above that. He said there's no personal divine. That's all your own imagination.
Okay.
Jiddu Krishnamurti also says that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
yes,
he says that.
yes.
There is no person, it's all your imagination. But Sri Aurobindo insists that there is a personal divine and also a universal divine. The impersonal and the personal. So, these three fundamental realizations, so that we read, okay? And yet in the integral, that also we read. So, they are neither the sole truth nor the full and only clues to the integral truth of the eternal, but rather the unfilled beginning, because in the beginning it is empty, the vast foundation of a greater divine knowledge. Other realizations there are that are imperatively needed and must be explored to the full limit of their possibilities. And if some of them appear to, at first sight, appear to at first sight to cover only divine aspects that are instrumental. Okay? Now, what does it mean by instrumental? There is sometimes you feel you are outside the body. Then there is the saguna and the nirguna, and there are many other experiences. Okay, the instrumentals are your mind, life, and body. They are the instrumentals. Okay, so to the activity of existence, but not inherent in its essence. Yet, when followed to their end and through their activity to its everlasting source is the supermind. You can have the experience of supermind temporarily even lower down in the second level. It is found that they lead to a disclosure of the divine without which our knowledge of the truth behind things would be left bare and incomplete. These seeming instrumentals are the key to a secret without which the fundamentals themselves, the fundamentals are Sat, Chit, Ananda. And the instruments are body, mind, life. And there is a connection between them. That you don't realize unless you go to the third level. When you go to the third level, you realize Sat, the subtle substance, becomes your gross body. The Chit Shakti, the consciousness, becomes your vital. The Ananda becomes your psychic being. There is this connection. And the supermind becomes your mind. So the divine quaternary becomes these things in the bottom. There is a connection.
The Ananda becomes your psychic being.
Psychic being. That's right. So the Sat becomes the body, consciousness becomes the vital, Chit Shakti becomes the vital, Ananda becomes the psychic being, and the supermind becomes your mind. So these are what he calls the instrument. And these things are not experienced in the Nirvana consciousness. They are not experienced. That's why they reject the physical world. But when he goes up, he sees that the fundamentals are related to the instrumentals.
So you would have to go higher than they reach.
Yes.
To have these fundamentals.
That's right. But he's saying that it is so satisfying that they don't want to go higher. He had to wait. That's what he's saying. Okay? So he's using the words instrumentals and fundamentals. The Nirvana, the Buddhists and the Mayavadins are rejecting the instrumentals. Body, mind, life are temporary. They'll disappear. But Srimad is saying no. They are expressions and debased values of the fundamentals. The fundamentals of Sat, Chit, Ananda, they become the body, mind, life. That's what he's saying. All the revelatory aspects of the divine must be caught in the wide net of an integral yoga. So you have to realize that everything is the divine. Transcendent, cosmic and individual. And even here, that which seems to be incomplete is a reflection of the highest fundamentals. The instruments are not unreal. They are shadow forms or imperfect forms of the higher. That is what he's saying. We can stop here today.
Okay. Namaste all.